So there's a misconception that if you're single, you are incomplete, perhaps damaged, salvaged, and you won't be happy until you find your one. And that is not true. That is bullshit. It is a message that has been fed to us by media and advertising. The truth is, when you're single, you have the richest soil for growth. That's why I created this podcast. And unlike other podcasts, this one is host-driven, not guest-driven. That means I will be rotating health and wellness experts 3 times a week to give you the giant box of wellness crayons, not just the primary colors, so you can start building a meaningful life. It's time to give singlehood a cape. You're going to love today's host. He's a friend and powerful catalyst with an amazing story. He's one of those guys who you just vibe with because he speaks the language. Just being around him is going to make you, at the very least, ask yourself a lot of questions, which is going to lead to revelations. Paul Chamberlain is known as the smart, funny, tortured coach who has learned through his own near-fatal challenges how to find the better part of our darker angels and shine a light on the unique gifts that make us powerful. He is also the creator-host of the popular Smart, Funny, Tortured podcast, which trends in the top 2.5% of personal journals on iTunes globally. Paul is he's an amazing man, and I love that he is a man creating a dialogue and helping other people. I think we need more men like him in this world, curious men, honest men, men willing to look at himself and also share his journey. Enjoy Paul Chamberlain.
Hi, my name is Paul Chamberlain, and I am also known as the Smart, Funny, Tortured Coach. I'm going to speak about something that we all know that, you can never find anything about it, but deliberate cold exposure. Yeah, exactly. Just what we need is another podcast on cold plunge. But I'm going to make this one a little bit different in that I'm going to explain my story of how this was probably one of the most helpful modalities that aided in my redemption, in coming back from 5 years ago of suicide ideation, abusing alcohol, and a marriage of 15 years at that time coming apart at the seams because I was not living an authentic or happy life. In that path to redemption, me bringing myself back, I tried a bunch of modalities, and it was great because each one contributed to that path. But the one that had the biggest impact on me was this cold exposure, was putting myself in cold water. Weirdest thing, would have not anticipated that. Like all of us had seen the crazy videos of Wim Hof, also known as the Iceman, whose history is peppered with these outrageous feats of like swimming under ice or staying submerged in ice, being injected with toxins and not developing symptoms, all these things that just make him this metabolic medical phenomenon. But at the core of this, it's just a matter of mastering what your body wants to do. And there's a magic in that. And I'm going to be talking about the science, but also my personal experience and what it felt like if you do it right. Wim Hof is a legend. And his story, which isn't often told, is that the whole way that he got into this line of work of proselytizing the benefits of cold exposure was that he lost his wife to suicide at a very young age in their marriage. They had little kids, and she jumped off of a building and killed herself. And in the throes of his depression, he knew that he had to rise to the occasion to be there for his kids. He felt called and pulled to swim in an ice cold pond, and how he felt afterwards gave him the fortitude to continue. So that's the legend behind that. But since that time, there's been a lot of science put behind us about what this does to our bodies. And I want to swing this back around to John's book, Single on Purpose. So I'm not single, like I said, now married 20 years. But I am a firm believer in that your job, your relationships, none of that matters unless you really know who you are and get to understand your essence and start living authentically. And in John's book, Single on Purpose, he has a chapter called Live at a Higher Frequency. And these are his words. Higher frequencies include love, gratitude, optimism, joy, acceptance, courage, vulnerability, basically any state that pulls you out of your panic and negativity. Any state that expands you instead of constricts you. It's a mind-body energy thing. That is what happens when you're in cold water. You get pulled out of whatever state you're in, and you are just concentrating on the fact that you cannot believe that you are in ice-cold water. So I'm going to talk about the science. About that, my personal experience, and what you can look forward to if you want to give this a shot. But let me get this out of the way. Disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on the internet. None of the content in this podcast constitutes medical advice or should be construed as a recommendation to immediately engage in deliberate cold exposure. Depending on your physical condition, there are risks with this practice. So please check with your doctor before considering anything we discuss in this episode. So with that out of the way, let me talk about this. So the very first time that I did cold exposure, I think it was a New Year's Day, 2 years ago. I was going to give it a shot. I'd gotten pumped up by seeing a bunch of Wim Hof videos, seeing people on social media plunging themselves in the horse troughs filled with ice water, breaking ice from jury-rigged box freezers. And I said, I'm going to give this a shot. Now, I tried other modalities in trying to bring myself back. I can tell you stories about ayahuasca. I can tell you about psilocybin, microdosing, therapy. Doing a lot. But this one had the most profound impact on me, and I never would have expected it. But the very first time I did it, I was walked into our pool. We live in Vegas, so it gets pretty cold in the winter, in an unheated pool that was probably going off at about 45, 46 degrees. And my wife was standing at the side of the pool with a timer and a towel, and I walked in, and I was only able to make it 43 seconds. Now, that's not only. I don't want to put anything on that. If you make it 15 seconds, the whole goal in this is living at a higher frequency, overpowering what your mind is telling you, no, you cannot do that. You're not capable of doing that. You can't do that. Why even bother? Well, I bothered. I took that step. I got in up to my neck. I didn't splash. I walked in calmly, tried to bring my breathing under control, and then my mind just said, fuck it, get out. You're going to freeze to death. Get out. And I did, but I made it 43 seconds. The next day I made it a little bit longer, and so on and so forth. So what's behind this? Well, I felt amazing when I got out. Obviously, when I warmed up, I felt fantastic. But I wanted to get that feeling back again. There was a high associated with it. I didn't imagine it, but I felt better. So this is what happens when you go ahead and you decide to throw yourself in cold water. There's a characteristic of a biological process called hormesis. And hormetic stress, so hormesis and hormetic stress is simply a fancy word for things like exercise, going in a sauna, cold exposure, intermittent fasting even, and putting yourself at high altitudes. It is this controlled stress that you can put on the body be conscious of. It has not been thrust upon you. You've essentially chosen to do this. And things begin to change when this happens. There's a great book by an author, Scott Carney. I'll put this in the show notes. It's a book called What Doesn't Kill Us. And it goes through all these various stressors, because modern man is not supposed to live at 72 degrees Fahrenheit 24/7 in perfect comfort. Our body gets nothing out of that. It is nice to be comfortable, and we can live a stable life with that. But if there are no stressors, think about weightlifting. If you're not creating these micro tears of your muscle fibers, the muscle will not grow. If you're not pushing yourself and your heart rate when you're jogging on a treadmill, your endurance will not increase. So that's hormesis. That's hormetic stress. So it's essentially low dose stimulation of stress, creating a favorable adaptation to non-deliberate stresses and then creating non-deliberate stress that protect the body. So from that hormetic stress, especially where cold is concerned, something else kicks in. And when a body is trying to get warm on its own, without jumping in a hot shower or putting clothes on or anything like that, but when the body is on its own trying to get warm, that's a process called thermogenesis. So it is, the formal definition is a process of creating heat through cold exposure. So it's a metabolic product. And so when the metabolism is involved, you're going to burn calories. And when you're burning calories, you need energy for that. So that's where, okay, here we go. So we already talked about hormesis, hormetic stress, that creates thermogenesis, which is your body trying to get warm. And then the mitochondria kicks in. So from, seventh grade science, mitochondria are essentially the powerhouses in our cells. They're these special compartments, organelles, they call them. They're powerhouses. They make overall aerobic power. They're responsible for creating energy in our bodies. They also help with immunity. They also even help with calcium storage, which is blood pressure and all that. And I'm not even going to go into that. And then they are primarily responsible for heat production. So if you continue to expose yourself to cold, you're going to make more mitochondria. And in turn, having more mitochondria means you're going to have more energy. Your immune system's going to go up. You're going to be able to create heat better and withstand cold. So now you can understand how it's like, ooh, this just isn't fun where I'm exposing myself to cold. There's some shit going on in your body that is very, very good for you. So you get more mitochondria, and where do mitochondria like to stay? In adipose tissue, fat, but not especially fat as we know it, but brown adipose tissue. So the reason that this adipose tissue is seen as brown or beige is because when you get a bunch of mitochondria, you can see them under a microscope, but when you're just looking at them in the naked eye, it causes the discoloration to the fat and makes it kind of brown when there's a lot of mitochondria in there. So you start creating more of this brown adipose tissue, this brown fat, you're contributing to a whole host of other metabolic functions, your immune system, all this stuff. It's really, and you feel it. So that's the perfect lead-in to feeling it, is that guess what else happens? You just don't force your body to get warm and toasty or defend itself against cold, but the brain gets involved. The brain gets involved in a big, big way. The most robust response is in a portion of the brain, especially the brain stem, that produces norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is also referred to as noradrenaline, and it's in that family of adrenaline. It's an amazing thing because not only is it a neurotransmitter, but it's also a hormone. So when it's released for the fight or flight focus. So yeah, you put yourself in cold water and your body's like going, fuck it, get out of here. You're going to die. You're going to die of hypothermia. Get out now. This isn't good for you. It also is on attention and mood. So you put yourself in cold water and you get this blast of norepinephrine, which heightens your attention and raises your mood and your focus. This leads into the fact that it's targeted pharmacologically to treat depression and ADHD. So most of the drugs that treat those conditions are aiming right for this result, right for this byproduct. So you can get this going without that. And I say that without knowing of conditions that may only be helped pharmacologically. You may have a physical condition where you can't immerse yourself in cold water. I say that with complete cognizance of the multitude of conditions that people may have. But this is also responsible, the norepinephrine is the thing responsible for increasing the biogenesis, the creation of mitochondria in your brown adipose tissue. So there's this circle of life going on when you decide to put yourself in cold water. That's why the frequency or the consistency of doing this reaps incredible benefits that I didn't even know. I just knew that I was feeling better. I just knew that at 5:30 in the morning, when I walked out to the pool, buck-ass naked, I might add, and I'll explain why, and got into cold water, and I was hyperventilating, and then I caused my mind to go, you're going to be okay. You're in the backyard. The water's not that cold. You can walk out, get your breathing under control. Then the byproduct of that was confidence. That I knew that whatever was going to hit me for the rest of the day was going to be nothing compared to being in the dark in a 40-something degree pool, getting my breathing under control and trying to go into a meditative state. That there was a magic to that. Back to the naked part. The thermogenesis, the body does a really cool thing. You'll notice if you stay still in cold water, if you're able to do that, your body will generate so much heat that it will create this micro layer around your skin and start to warm up the water around it. If you stay perfectly still, the minute you move, you'll break that barrier and, oh, Jesus, can you feel the cold? But when you've got fabric floating around you, that's constantly breaking that heat layer. So that's why I elected nobody's around. Nobody can see. It's in the dark. Kids are asleep. Nobody's going to get traumatized. I go in, sans clothing. So these are the medical processes, the scientific processes that come into doing this. This is why you feel so damn good, because you've literally activated the brain that people are taking medication for or finding other ways, illicit or legal, to activate this very, very primitive part of the brain that controls mood, attention, and focus. And you're doing it by just putting yourself in water. All right. So how do you do this? How are you going to put your body in a state of hormetic stress? How are you going to expose yourself? You can do it in multiple ways. You do not have to, I swear to God, you do not have to go and spend $5,000 on a self-contained cold plunge tub, nor do you have to go down to Home Depot, get a horse trough, fill it with ice water, and then pour in another 6 bags of ice, and then record yourself on TikTok. Don't do it that way. Pick the one that is most accessible to you. You don't have a pool. You don't have a horse trough full of ice water. You can do a cold shower. Cold shower can reap the same kind of benefits. You maybe won't be able to stay in as long, get the coverage that you need, but a cold shower first thing in the morning will produce the same results. Okay, so you can start with a 30-second cold shower, stand there, try to get your breathing under control, and you've done it. Or you can do a deliberate cold exposure and go into water. What I do not recommend is jumping in. Do not jump in. Do not splash around. Go in slowly. Control your breathing. Once again, you're trying to achieve a meditative state. You're trying to get control of your body's involuntary processes of hyperventilating or wanting just to get the hell out of the water. So there's other ways too. Cryotherapy, we've all heard about that. I personally have not done cryotherapy. That one, there are fans of it, and I would love to. I will eventually try it. I mean, I have to, but yeah, cryotherapy is another way to impose hormetic stress on you. And then you know what? The Scandinavians have proved this, and there's actually been several studies that have focused on just this, but taking a long walk in cold weather with little clothing, that can do the same thing. You can take a 2-hour walk in, 35, 40, 45 degree weather in a t-shirt, and you're good. You're doing the same thing on yourself. So again, find any way that you can impose hormetic stress on yourself. Cold shower, immerse your body up to your neck, cryotherapy, or taking a long walk in cold weather. You will get the same benefits. And I encourage you to do this privately, do this unannounced, do this safely, but have this be your own kind of special, dare I say, ceremony where, the first few times you do it, don't put it on social media. Have it be that quiet moment where you are getting control of your body, your core, your essence, and then track your progress. Okay, yesterday I made it 30 seconds. Today I made it 33 seconds. And journal around it. Have it be the nucleus of your day, because, God damn it, you're probably going to be the only person you know that did that early in the morning when nobody was looking. And that is empowering to have that going for yourself. So track it. Build a little ceremony around it. Build privacy around it. Don't splash around. When you're in the water, and if you can, bring your mind to a space that is trying to block things out, because your mind is going to be firing on all cylinders. But just try to bring it to just a black screen or something that brings you peace. Think of yourself elsewhere. But it's a pretty amazing thing. So, in summary, this was a practice that I still do to this day. This morning, I was in the pool. The weather started to change. The pool's going off at about 52 degrees, and that is cold enough. Oh, and then one last thing, that when you get out, you can, Wim Hof has an app, and there are exercises that he encourages to get the blood pumping again, to start your thermogenesis, to really get the body creating heat. And that is doing push-ups or these horse stances, which are kind of spread-legged squats, squatting position, which are really helpful. Do not jump into a hot shower to warm up. The benefits of your body warming itself up on its own have tremendous benefits. I mean, there's studies that are out there. There was a Japanese study that showed that men's testosterone increased dramatically doing this versus working out, then cold plunge. But cold plunge, warming up, then working out, massive effect on testosterone levels. One study, it's out there, but there are a whole host of benefits that people have described on this. I'll put the books that I followed and the podcasts and YouTube videos of some of the thought leaders and medical professionals who know a hell of a lot more than I do about this. But this is something that will make you a stronger self, a stronger person. You will have this little pocket challenge daily or every other day or whenever you want to do this that you will beat. And that is incredibly empowering. And it will have you living at a higher frequency. All right. Thank you for listening. And my name is Paul Chamberlain, and I am the smart, funny, tortured coach.
I hope that episode was helpful. Hey, listen, if you want to share your singlehood journey, if you've gone somewhere and come back, if you have revelations and wisdom, please share your story. It's going to help other people. Nothing makes us feel more connected than hearing other people's stories. So just send me the audio of your story, and you can just record it directly from your phone and email it to theangrytherapist@gmail.com. Also, if you want our Single on Purpose newsletter, go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life. You will get tools and articles and other people's stories, and also Zoom links to private gathers. So if you want to join our community, go to singleonpurpose.life. Thank you for listening. Be well. We hope you tell a friend.
Kia ora, my name's Adrienne Buckingham. I'm Canadian born, but I'm living in New Zealand. I left my marriage at the end of 2019. There was something wrong with our marriage, and we couldn't find a way to talk about it or figure out what that was. So I found myself living alone, suddenly without my kids half the time, and in a new career. And then the pandemic hit, and this country went into a very severe lockdown, and I was living outside of town, and I didn't see anyone I knew other than my children for 8 weeks. So that gave me a lot of time to sit alone, or sit with my children. And that was a real test about how life had gone, what parts of my choices were justified or not, what my role was in anything that happened. I tried to go back. We tried to do that, but things happen the way they happen. Now, I'm getting to a place where, my marriage was really wrapped up in my career, and my career was wrapped up in my marriage. And so I've had to rebuild who I am, both personally and professionally, and as a parent, independently. And I have not always known how to do that or who I am. I got involved in this relationship when I was quite young, before I'd really, knew who I was and what I wanted from the world. So now I am, it's a reset button in a lot of ways, back to that sort of early to mid-20s. I didn't want to end up in another long-term relationship, so I thought I would do 5 by 5. So have 5 let's call them dates, with 5 different people, no more than 5 times each, because I figured 5 was a handful. and that got me back on the horse. And then I stopped sort of after 2 or 3 and thought, actually, this isn't me. I'm not that interested. I like a plan, but I did end up finishing that 5x5. And it was a really fascinating experience in terms of learning about me and realizing I still don't know what I want from another person. But what I am learning is what I want from myself when I have days without my kids. I'm learning what I like. Turns out it's really, simple, lame stuff like sunshine and coffee and tea, and if it's warm enough, walking. So middle-aged. It's phenomenal to have been in a bit of a time warp of a relationship, and you just press pause on yourself, and then to come out and go, well, who am I now? It's hard, because I live in a town that is very much, a good place to raise children, and family-focused and oriented, and I really enjoy my own company and the solitude, but I really don't love parenting alone. I find it really lonely. But I'm learning how to do that too, and learning how to love it. And as my kids get older and, more verbal and more opinionated, the idea of introducing another dynamic into those relationships is just doesn't appeal at all. So it's just how we go and finding how we get our needs met by ourselves and by other types of relationships. I realize I have great capacity to fall in love with the world and enjoy really lovely interactions and high quality connections with people I don't know that well. And then I can go home at the end of the day and enjoy being alone in my kitchen, which is the color that I chose to paint it. So that's been a real gift. Not easy, not every day, but a lot of days I can see it. I can see the gift. It's easier when it's sunny and warm. Thank you for letting me share this, Kamihi. There is something so important about having witnesses in parenting, in life. And that's not always easy to get when you are living in another country away from family. And having, given up another family. I think there's something in that. And I don't know if we call that the immigrant story as well, but who knows? Anyway, thank you for hosting this community. And thank you to everyone who has shared and the little clips that you've put on Instagram, because they have mattered to me. So thank you.